Today we're going to be going through סימן Kufnun Daled, some of the points that are still missing to complete. The Kail already is holding a Kufnun Hey, which that's going to be the share tomorrow. What was learned last week, this is really on things that were learned a week and a half ago, which is some Sa'ifim from Yud Ches through till the end of the Siman. There is a concept of Yisrael Abo Machmasakum, a Yid which comes, does he have the power of a Goy or not? This halacha applies in Choshen Mishpat in a bunch of places. It applies in Veilech and it applies in Yeridea. In Veilech you have it in Hilchos Pesach, when a Goy has chametz that belongs to a Yid. When the Yid has chametz that belongs to a Goy. In Yeridea you have it when a Goy lent money to a Yid with ribis, and then a Yid bought the loan. In Choshen Mishpat you have it in Hilchos Shtaris, in Siman Memhei, in Siman Samach Vav, in Hilchos Alva, regarding documents, the validity of the documents that there are. If a Yid that comes Mikoyach from a Goy, he bought a document, a note from a Goy, and that note is not perfect according to halacha. And here in Kufnun Daled regarding Hezekriya, when a Goy is neighbors with a Yid and there is some sort of window or viewing or anything of the sort which Yid to a Yid would have been asur, Yid to a Goy or Goy to a Yid would have been mutter because of the laws. And what is the din of a Goy that comes mikoyach, the Yid that comes mikoyach from a Goy? That is in Siman Yud Ches, Yud Tes, Chav Chav Aleph. We're going to be discussing mainly Yud Ches and Yud Tes. And with the general introduction, the Dinei Hezekriya only apply from a Yid to a Goy. Only from a Yid to a Yid. There's no Hezekriya towards a Goy. What's the reason for it? You have a tshuva from the Rashba, Chelek Dalet, Siman Shin Chav Beis, that says, Ein akusim makpidim al Hezekriya. And the reason is, Einu mipnei shebotei meshubadim zel al zeh, therefore there's no Hezekriya. Sheyuchal iftech zel zel, mipnei shem makpidim bekach. They're not makpidim Hezekriya. That's in Chelek Dalet Siman Shin Chav Beis. The Rashba doesn't explain why. You look a little bit earlier in the Rashba, in Chelek Gimel Siman Kuf Samach, he says, over there there's a question, and when it discusses the question, the lashon of the question is, Dineim shel akum lasus beseich sheloi ma sheyirtze. And in the guf of the tshuva, the Rashba over there uses the words that the reason why there's no Hezekriya by a Goy, the Yid opens the window to a Goy's chatzir, is because Einoi boish mizeh sheroyehu betashmishav. So you have pretty much two reasons. One reason is mitzad the minhag that they're not makpid on it, because Einoi boish betashmishav. And the other reason is dinayim shel akum lasus beseich shaloi. According to legally, each person is allowed to do whatever he wants in his own properties. Now, sometimes dinayim means dinah de malchusa with all the restrictions of dinah de malchusa. Sometimes it means that it's not specifically dinah de malchusa, but that's how they're accustomed to. That is regarding Hezekriya. What about oira? Is there the concept of mafil when it is a Goy over there, and dinah de malchusa? It's also not the tur that's brought in the Smes of Cotton and Bay says that there's no, in dinah de malchusa there's no isur for somebody to build in his own property something which is going to block oira to his neighbor, and the person, if he owns a property and he has up until his property line, he could do whatever he wants, and he could block the light for his neighbor if his neighbor decided to have a window on his property facing that way, and there is no such chazakah. So that is essentially the yesod, which based on this is going to be the discussion in these seifim regarding a Yid which comes mikoyach from the Goy. Sometimes that is the Yid which was the one who is mazik, and sometimes it's the Yid who is the one who is nizik. That means sometimes it will be that the Goy opened up a window to the Yid's chatzar, and now he sold the chatzar to another Yid, And now the question is, does he have to close his window? And sometimes it is that the Yid open up a window to the Goy's Chatzir, and now another Yid buys the Chatzir, and the question is, does the Yid now have to close it? And each one of them will come mikoyach ha'akum. That means the one who opened, if the Yid was the first one to open the window to the side of the Goy, is going to say, mikoyach ha'akum, I had a right to do it. And the Goy had no right to be meicha. And I did it for a bunch of years. Maybe I'm machzik in it. And if it's the other way around, that the Goy opened up a window to the Yid's Chatzir, again, and the Yid who buys it say, I'm coming mikoyach ha'akum, that this was there the whole time. You didn't do anything to prevent the hezek, and therefore I should be able to keep whatever rights, when I purchase the property from a Goy, I should be able to keep whatever rights the Goy has. Now, as a side part, which you're also going to get into soon, kinyan from a Goy is different than kinyan from a Yid. And that involves an element of hefker in between. It doesn't get transferred straight from a Goy to a Yid, the concept of kinyanim. And especially not when it's talking about shtaris, that you have in Hilchas Ribis and then also Mechilas Chametz. There's the whole discussion that we discussed last year in Hilchas Mechilas Chametz about kinyanim with a Goy. How can you sell something? How can you buy something? It's not as simple as it seems, and that bears relevance to who is the person who is muchzak over here, because if somebody's kainim in a hefker, he has certain rights that otherwise he would not have. So now we're talking about over here. You have a case when a Yid opened up a window to the Goy, or a Goy opened up a window to the Yid. Din of the Malchusa is absolutely no problem. So if a Yid opens up towards a Goy's chatzir, he can never claim chazakah. Why can't he claim chazakah? Well, according to the Rosh that we know, if you can't be moiche, you can't be machzik. The Goy can't be moiche because the machus, he can't be moiche, so therefore the Yid can't be machzik. And even according to those that say, the ones that disagree with the Rosh, and that is the halacha, the Rashba, the Ramban, and everybody else, that you could make a chazakah to even if the other person is not moiche, even when the hezek is not really there. Over here again, the Goy is not moiche, he can't be moiche, and therefore, since he can't be moiche, can't have a chazakah. Since he can't have a chazakah, he can't be moiche, whichever way you want to define it. Why? Simply, the person is not mazik the other one. The Yid is not mazik the Goy. The Goy cannot be moiche, or the Yid is not mazik him. The Goy can't be moiche. If it's mitzvah that the Goy is ain't a boish b'maisav, he's not nizik from hezek liyas. What difference does it make to him? So therefore, the Yid can never be machzik. At the same time, it can't be machzik a hezek. At the same time, a Yid also can't be ma'akev a Goy from opening windows towards his property. Simon also because of din of the malchusa. He has no recourse against the Goy if the Goy opens up a window towards his chatzah. Now, so comes the question on the side over here: what happens if in din of the malchusa the Goy could be ma'akev for whatever reason it is? There are building codes that you have to have a certain distance from the other person's window for whatever reason it is, or not have. If the two houses, if you look in all the houses that have shared driveways, you'll be able to see some places that the windows are not exactly parallel one to another. It's not exactly so clear that you could see towards each other. Some places yes, some places no. It depends on the building codes and depends on the distance between the houses. What happens if the Goy could be moicher and could make an issue out of it, and b'payil he didn't? Could we say that the Yid was machzik over here so much that when the Goy sells it, he still has the chazakah? So if it will be only mitzvah din of the malchusa, maybe you could say such a svara, even though the chacham were not masakin the din of mechayet, you could be kaineh by lack of mechayet by a Goy. But mitzvah, the second reason that the Rashba brings, well, the main reason that the Rashba brings, that it's mitzvah the Goy is not boish b'maisav, therefore he's not moiches, so therefore that would not, the Yisrael would not be able to be machzik. So now this is all before the Yid bought the properties. Now we're talking about when the Yid comes and he buys the actual property. The first Sifrit Ches is talking about when the Yid opened up a window towards the gag, facing the gag of his Goyish neighbor, and now the Goyish neighbor sold his property to a Yid, and he wants to keep the window open towards there, or fakert that the guy opened up the window towards the Gag Shal Yisrael, and and he wants to, and he sold the property, and now the guy wants to have it's facing, to be able to keep the window going over there. And the one who buys it says that he's coming mikoyach hagoy, whether because he wants to continue to be mazik, or the neighbor says he's coming mikoyach hagoy, that he wants to continue to be mazik the goy, or because he's muchzuk. And over here comes the machlekes of mechaber and ramah. What exactly, how much koyach does a yid have when he comes mikoyach from the goy? So the first case is, like we mentioned, that the person is, if a person opened up a window onto the goy's chotzer, and then the goy sold it to a yid, and the yid now, the second yid who bought the property of the goy, wants to now go and build up a wall which is going to block the window of the yid who is there. The Mechaber says that the buyer cannot build a wall that's going to block the window of the yid who was there before, the first yid who had a window over there, or force him to close the window. Even though the guy, if he would have still been the owner, he would have been able to put up in his property a full wall going up and block the light of the Yiddish neighbor that he had. Still in all, the one who buys it, even though it's coming mikoyach hakum, is only there legreis. He only gets the benefits, he only gets the detriments of coming mikoyach hakum. He doesn't get the benefits of coming mikoyach hakum. That is the Mechaber. The Rama disagrees with him and says that, being that the guy would have been able to do that, so then the Yid who is coming mikoyach ha'akum, also gets the malius, also gets the benefits of the guy, and therefore he's able to build up a wall, and he can't go and force him to brick his window, but in his own property, being that the machusa, the guy could have done, picked up a wall all the way up and blocked the sunlight from going in. He could do the same exact thing, but he can't force him to block his window. That's what Smeh points out, because Medinayim, you would not have the right to block the other person's window. The most you're able to do is build up in your own property, up to your property line, and therefore that's all you can do now also. And the Ramos continues and says, anything which is in Din de Malchusa, if in Din de Malchusa you're allowed to do it, not stam that the goy could have done it, but if in Din de Malchusa you have a right to do it, then you could for sure do it. And the lashon of the Ramah of Chol Shekain, you could understand that he would explain that this would also apply to the Ramah, to the Mechaber. The Mechaber also would hold that if in Din Malchusa you're allowed to go up, then the koine, the lekeach, will also be able to go up. That's one way of understanding the Ramah regarding this. And happens, and this is, and there's another way of understanding the Ramah that it's not so, that the Ramah is only talking l'shitosai, and that is based on two answers of the Smeh who discusses this concept in Siman Memhei regarding Ishtaris. And over there the Smeh gives one answer to the difference between Siman Memhei and our Siman, which we're going to get to in a minute, and then he explains with Derech Agav the difference in our Siman, and then in our Siman, he also explains in Sif Yutes, he explains the difference between Sif Yutes and Sif Yutes, and over there from that you understand how he looks at Sif Yutes. What's in Siman Memhei? Siman Memhei Sif Yud Zayin, which is Dinei Shtaris. There is over there a halacha in that Siman, that when you write a shtar, and this you learned in Hilchas Ksuba also, that when you write a shtar, you can't have distance more, a big enough distance between the text of the shtar and the chsimus of the edim, that enough that somebody could stick another line in between. If you have that amount of space, the shtar is possible. Bedinenu, according to Jewish law. Therefore, when the Yid writes a shtar, you would usually see that they would put, I had to prepare a shtar for somebody, and the shtar didn't fit into a small page, and because he wanted to, there should be 100% according to halachas, I had to print it on 11 by 17, those bigger double size page, and it was it looks like a billboard. That's the shtar. Why? Because he wanted to have everything without all the lines perfect and the chsimis on the same page, etc. Bedineim, it's not like that. Bedineim, you could actually sign, at the end of a document, you have a document which is 28 pages, and at the last page you sign, and as long as you have a notary with it and everything is stapled together, there's no machlekes between the tzdadim, that's good. You know, unless you switch pages in between. Some people are even more, that they initialize, they make initials on every page. But you don't have to have chsimis on the same page as the rest of the text. For sure you don't have to measure the distance between them. So when you have a yid that comes mikoyach ha'akum, that means a goy lent money to a yid. I'm not discussing the hilchos tziribus element of here, which is not part of this discussion of Siman. Hey, a yid lent money to a goy lent money to a yid, and he got bored of collecting from him, or he decided he's moving out of town, and he sold the shtar. And he said, sold the shtar to another yid. Yid have collection agencies. Today in New York, you have some of the biggest ones that buy bad mortgages from the banks and go after the people with that are Yidden, groups of Yidden that deal with it. The Yidden always dealt with these kinds of businesses, and nothing changed. America's Natandish. So I still continue with the same line of business. So you have a Yid bought from a goy, sold his shtar choiv to a Yid, and now comes to Bez and he wants to collect with it. He's not going to court. Comes to Bez and he wants to collect with it. And the Bezin looks at the shtar, and there's a gap between the end of the shtar and the chsimis. But the shtar looks real. That means the whole thing is one ksav. You don't see any extra lines being added over there. It means the shtar is all written in one handwriting, or in today's day and age we'll call it, it's all typed up in one font, and you see that nobody added something else under it, and it all works out perfectly. But there's a gap that could have put a new line, a whole line in there. So Bedineim, they would have for sure collected with the shtar. Bedineinu will make a shtar puzzle. But it's not because we say that the shtar is not real. Not because we say that the choiv is not a choiv. We have a psul on the shtar. So over there, the Shulchan Aruch over there clearly says, Abba mekoyach hakum areu kemoiser ligbois b'shtar she'edav meluchakim shnei shitim im nahagu ha'akum ligbois boy. As long as the goyim are noyek to do it, you're allowed to do the same thing. And the Smeh over there writes, the Smeh Sifkot Lamet Ches over there in Siman Hey writes, even though that over here you're coming mikoyach hagoy and it's only l'mal yusa, because you're using the koyach hagoy l'mal yusa to be able to get a benefit out of it. And in Siman Kuf Nun Dalad, which we're here, the Mechaber Paskins, it's only l'gerei. So you have your bami koyach ha'akum is ka'akum. It's different. The first answer that the Smeh gives, and that's the one we're going to focus on right now. Tzarich loimer, the shani hacha b'shtar choiv shehu Dina de Malchusa. Shtar choiv is mitzad Dina de Malchusa, and he proves that from Siman Shin Samach Tes, that because it's Dina de Malchusa, the Mechaber is maskim to paskin like that, and therefore the first text says we have to say that here in Siman Kuf Nun Daled the Mechaber will be moide that if Dina de Malchusa you have, it's set in stone, mitzad Dina de Malchusa, which the Dina de Malchusa category is a whole different pasha for itself. There's three main shittas, and Alter Rebbe paskins one way, according to certain Rishonim, and other people paskin differently. When Dina de Malchusa applies, but let's say Dina de Malchusa applies, which means it's a law across the board for the benefit of the Yid, for the benefit of everybody, doesn't discriminate against the Yidden, etc. Then that shtar is considered valid, and the Mechaber would be moided if Dina de Malchusa kicks in, and even in Kuf Nun Daled, you would be able to build up a wall and block the light of the neighbor. Kuf Nun Daled over here.
Both reasons of the Rashba, both are not inside the Malchusa. They're both just living. Even the reason that everyone could do whatever they want, that shows.
Yeah, but in the Nusach HaShaila it says Bedineim. Nusach HaShaila, in the Rashba, the one who asked the question, when the Rashba describes the question that he was asked, he mentions Bedineim. With what? No, this is just a discussion if the Mechaber is moided Dina de Malchusa or not. If when the Ramah says that by Dina de Malchusa is different, is that only according to the Ramah or also according to the Mechaber? From here, from the Smeh Mashma, in Siman Mem Hey, that the Mechaber will be moided when it comes to Dina de Malchusa, that the person who bought and is coming Mikoyach Ha'akum is able to put up a wall just like the Goy would have been able to put up a wall, because that is the law.
No, so the last two reasons are both non-inside the Malchusa, according to the Smeh.
Right, but that the Rashba is talking about when you are being mazik the goy. Over here, we're not talking about whether we're koife the Baal HaChaloin to brick his window. We're talking about whether the Baal HaChotzer, the Baal HaGag, the one who's coming, Mikoyach HaAkum, has a right to put up a wall in his property. The Ramah then continues, another point, that the Lekeach has to be, the one who's Lekeach has to do a chazak in the karka before he gives the money to the goy, because if not, the moment he gives the money to the goy is mistalik from the property, and the karka now becomes hefker, and therefore, he's only going to be koine from the hefker afterwards. The moment the karka becomes hefker, then the yid who has the windows right now is zoiche ba'avir das klape hefker. And now, when the kohen is going to come now and pick up the karka from the hefker, and he's going to want to put up a wall, he's not going to be able to, because the yid who has the chaloin is already zeich in a hefker. So therefore, you have to do it first. And then Amos says another thing, continues that all this is also this only applies. Now, by the way, this paragraph of the Ramah that calls says only if the chatzer of the goy was koidem, came before the windows of the Yisrael, only if you know it first. By the way, this whole paragraph, the Gra explains this whole Siman differently and takes this whole paragraph and sticks it in Sifyutis. But just a sidebar, if you're going to ever want to deal with that, there's a book called Piskei HaGra, it's on Hebrew books, and that takes the nekudas from the Gra, which are lahalach, the Gra wrote very short, and he develops them into full things. If you want to spend some time learning it, it's about 2 pages in Piskei HaGra on this Siman. You get a whole different mahalach on Sifyut Ches and Yates. He makes the mechaber into one shitta over here, the Ramah into a second shitta, and the mechaber and Sifyut Tes into a third shitta. That's if you want to look through it, but it's just going to confuse everybody, so I'm not going to go into it now. I'm just pointing it out to you. Anyway, so the Ramah says over here that if the chotzer, this only applies if the chotzer, if you know that the windows, that the chotzer of the goy was there in place before the windows, before the yid opened up the windows that are going to facing towards the goy. But if there is a suffix, then the buyer has to bring a raya. Why does the buyer have to bring a raya? It has to bring a raya the buyer has to bring a raya that his chotzer came before the windows. Why? Because the shachen, the Jewish neighbor, has already a chazakah for his windows. Why does he have a chazakah for his windows? Because we already said it's a shaila of hefker. So we're going to see exactly what chazakah is referring to. And therefore he can't block it, be mindful on it without a raya. And for sure...
The shaila of hefker, how?
What do you mean? What's
the possibility that he has chazakah? Even if he came before the goy,
I mean, if he came before...
If we're not sure that the goy's chotzer was there before the years.
So these windows were koine avir from the hefker. Were koine from the hefker in front of them, and therefore you can't block them.
So before the goy was hefker?
Before the goy was hefker. And after the goy, it's also hefker.
Only if
he's not koine first. So because you have a suffix...
We're not talking about after the goy, we're talking about when they're
before,
buying from the goy.
Buying from the goy. Yeah, but over here the chazakah is not klapi the goy. The chazakah is if it was before the goy. If the chaloinus of a yid, if it's a suffix, and for sure if you know that the chaloinus came before the chotzer of the goy, then you know for sure he was kind of from the hefker.
Or from whoever else lived there. But that's what I'm asking. The chazakah that is here is basically...
that he was kind of from hefker. Now, even though the Ramah holds that Abba Mikoyach HaAkum is ka'akum le'inyan that he gets even the mal yoseh, and lo yitzur the goy would have decided to put up a wall there, it would make absolutely no difference whether the chalonis were there before the chalonis came after. He would still be able to put up a wall and block the light. Still in all, in this scenario, the Ramah paskins that he cannot go and build a wall in front of the wall. He would be moided to the mechaber that over here we say only legreyese. Taz comes with a powerful question. Over here. It's a stire to what we learned before, 2 seifim ago, as if to Zion. Which is a stire which screams in front of you that you should have chapped onto it right away. Who is the muchzuk? and who is the Moitzi? In Sif Design, we say Punkt Verkehrt. Over here, what does he say? That Baal, the one who buys the Chatzar, can't put up his wall until he brings a raya that he was there, that the Chatzar was there before the windows. In Sif Design, over there, when it discusses the three cases of the Rosh, one of the cases of the Rosh is, if you have a chaloin that's open to a churba, and afterwards there's a suffix if the churba was before the windows or the windows were before the churba, the Baal HaChaloin has no chazakah until he proves with Eidim that he had the window there, before the churba. So therefore, why over there is Baal HaChaloin not the muchzak, and over here Baal HaChaloin is the muchzak? Malkim Safik. Why suddenly, if we say Malkim Safik, you go after the Baal HaChaloin like a Sif Design, over here also should go according to Baal, like over here, then the Sif Design also should be Baal HaChaloin. If it's not Baal HaChaloin, it's the one who wants to be Moitzi. Then why over here, we're not going to, why over here we say Punkt Verkehrt? Over here we say that the one who wants to block the Chaloin is the Moitzi, and therefore he cannot block the Chaloin until he proves that he has a right to block it. And in Seif Tazayin, the Baal HaChurva says to the Baal HaChaloin, until you prove to me that you were there first, I don't have to worry about it, I could build whatever I want. And he answers, he says that the difference between the two is that over here, Baal HaChaloin is coming, he has a schus mitzad that he is koine min ha'hefker. Therefore, be'etzem there's no way of proving that he was koine min ha'hefker, because there's no shtar mechila from hefker, and there's no rayas that there was mechila from hefker. So his koyach comes from the fact that he did it mitzad, he was machzik min hefker, and that is a strong chazaka. And if the other person wants to say no, you were not machzik min hefker, the other person has to prove that you were not machzik min ha'hefker. It has nothing to do with the guy being moicher or guy not being moicher. The guy could have been there for 40 years and not be moicher, or yes be moicher, and it has no bearing on the chazaka. The chazaka is based on the concept that it could have been koine min ha'hefker. And Sif Tezayin, we're talking about that the person, the Baal HaChaloin, doesn't claim it was koine min ha'hefker. The Baal HaChaloin claims that I opened my window and I was machzik on your churva. And the whole question, if it was a real chazaka according to the Rosh, or not a real chazaka, if it's not a real chazaka, if you are able to be machzik when you're not mazik, or you're not able to be machzik when you're not mazik. But there is another yid over here, and there is for the Baal HaChaloin to be able to be machzik, he has to prove that the Baal HaChurva allowed him to do it before, because according to the Rosh, he has to prove that he allowed him before he became a churva. According to the Rashba and the Ran, there's a whole discussion according to Rashba, the Ramban, all the other shittas, what's considered chazaka, how long he could be machzik or not. But the point is that there is another person over here, and the person who has the churva is be'etzem the muchzik over here in his own property. And if you want to tell the Baal HaChurva, you're not allowed to do something in your own property, you have to go and prove to the Baal HaChurva that the Baal HaChurva actually allowed you to do it, or that you had a right to do it. He was maknet to you. Now the only question that I have over here, maybe somebody could think of a teretz at some point, is the Taz is makshe from a Ramban onto a Rosh. The Ramban and Rosh disagree in Sif Design, but what the Ramok quotes over here is from the Ramban. What the Mechaber quotes over there that he's bringing is from the Rosh. So it's lav dafka that you could say that both would apply, because in the Ramban itself there are those who understand that the Ramban says that you could be machzik even on top of a churva, which we discussed in the previous year. Anyways, I'm not going to get into that now, especially since I don't have a good answer for it. And the Ramah continues, and he says there's no chazaka against a goy, obviously, because a goy can't be moiche b'dinayim, and a chazaka. So now a chazaka against the person who's bami koyach ha'akum begins only the moment that he is actually arrived over there. So if he's going to start making a chazaka after the yid moved there, then it would be considered a chazaka. Comes Sif Yutes, and you have a story which seems the exact opposite of Sif Yutes. And the Mechaber Paskin is the exact opposite. Over here we're talking about a Yid opens up windows to the Chatzar of a Goy, and the Goy then goes and sells his Chatzar to another Yid. And now the new Yid comes and demands that the person, that the original Yid should close his windows, because he's mazikim with Hezekriya. The Mechaber says that the buyer is right, and he could force the one who opened the windows towards the guy to block his windows. And the Ramon this says yesh chelkim. We're going to yesh chelkim. We already know that there's yesh chelkim. Why medina bo machmasakum? Which means the Mechaber, the Ramon here paskins that there is there are people that hold that over here also yesh chelkim, and he would not, and the koine would not be able to force the moicher to brick up his window. And the Noisei Kelim discussed this whole issue because there's a stira from Mechaber to the Mechaber. There's problems with the way that Ramah describes it, and they go through the whole thing. And when they discuss this, the stira, they also explain how the previous if goes. And the first thing is the machlokes smeh and shach about how to understand what happened in the first in Sif Yutes and what happened in Sif Yutes. We'll go through them in short. The smeh explains that the reason why in Sif Yutes you have over there that we say that the Baal HaChaloin has a right to keep his window open and he could prevent the Baal HaChotzer from putting up his wall. And in Sif Yutes, the Mechaber paskins that the Baal HaChaloin has no right to keep his window open and he's forced to brick up his window. He says, look and be medayik in the lashon of the Mechaber. The Mechaber specifically used different lashons between here and there. In Sif Yutes, the Mechaber is talking about that you open the window onto the guy's gag, which means there's no hezekriya. And what does the other guy want to do? He wants to pick up a wall, which means he doesn't want to do a direct hezek, and there's nobody doing actual a direct hezek. It's not really, even though by Yisrael really you're not supposed to open up a window onto the other person's gag, which we learned before. Still in all, it's not really such a hezek. And now, when the new Jew bought from the guy, wants to put up a wall, what is he doing? He is actually creating a actual hezek. That means the window open to the gag was not really a full hezek. The window opened, the wall being put up in front of the window is a complete hezek. And now the person who's coming Mikoyach HaGoy wants to do an actual full-fledged hezek b'yadayim against the person who didn't really do a real hezek towards him. And on this, the Mechaber says that the buyer cannot go and create a full-fledged hezek towards the other person. But in Sif Yutes, you're not talking about Pesach l'gag shel chaveira. He didn't open the window towards the gag of his friend. He opened the window towards the chatzar of his friend. Since he opened the window to the chatzar of the guy, over there, it's mamash hezekriya, which is a hezek b'yadayim, practically speaking. Therefore, the lekeach could go and tell him, brick up your windows. And if you could brick up his window, you could force him to brick up his windows, he for sure could put up a wall in front of him to block the hezekriya. And not because b'machmasakum, but simply because I am preventing hezek that you're going to do every moment. And over here, the smeh sends you back to Siman Hey again. And Siman Hey, let's go back to Siman Hey. Over there, the smeh, when he explains the difference between Siman Hey and our Siman, after he gives the explanation that we mentioned before, that the reason why the Mechaber is Mekel is because Din the Machus is a separate category, the smeh says no, there's a difference. And this is how the smeh goes and explains the difference between Siman Hey and Siman Kuf Nun Daled. That in Siman Hey, by a shtar, when the person comes and he says, Mitzadin de Machus I have koyach, the shtar proves that the Yid owes money to the guy. That's clear. Be'etzem, a Yid would have been able to be goyva with a shtar. Elamai, there's a side problem, the Chacham were poisel certain kinds of shtaras. But it doesn't mean that the Yid did not borrow money from the guy. It just means that the shtar is faulty. Lu Yitzur have been between two Yidden, and the shtar was faulty, they wouldn't tell you can't collect, tell you go find the Eidim and go write a new shtar. But it doesn't cancel the debt. So all we're saying is that the Yid who comes Mikoyach HaGoy gets the rights of the Goy, that he doesn't have to worry about the psul in the shtar, because you're not causing a specific hezek to Yisrael. The Yisrael anyways owes the money to the Goy. And now that the Goy came Achmas Yisrael, the Yisrael owes the money to Yisrael. Elamai have a shayla on the kashrus of a shtar. So on that we say, you don't have to worry about the kashrus of the shtar as much. But in Siman Kuf Nun Daled, what is it? In Sif Yutches, he says, this is what he explains in Siman Mei. In Sif Yutches, the person who opened the window onto the Gag did it for a few years. He doesn't have a chazakah, halachic chazakah, but he was muchzik, so to speak, in the window that he has over there for a few years. And now the kohen wants to come and put up a wall in front of him. That means the kohen wants to actually come and do a hezek v'yadayim. And therefore, just like he writes over here, therefore, the halacha, the mechaber, is going to be makpid that you should not allow a person to be mazik v'yadayim. Even though by the Bezdin preventing the koine from putting up a wall, being magbia his building and blocking the existing window, you're causing a hezek also to the koine, because the koine now can't go and put up a third floor. He wanted to, that's why he built the house. He can't put up a third floor, but you're not doing a hezek v'yadayim. It's a hezek, but not not the same hezek. You're being meineah him from having something that it could have had to the lekech. But if you let the lekech do it, you're letting him do a hezek mamash b'yadayim. And over there, he explains, and that is the difference in Sifit Ches and Sifit Tes. That the difference also over there is whether you're going to do, and he sends you back to over here to tell you that the difference whether you do a hezek b'yadayim or you don't do a hezek b'yadayim. And that's in Sifit Ches, you're preventing the lekeach from doing a hezek b'yadayim, and so if you test, you are preventing the original shachin from doing a hezek b'yadayim. And the Smeh over there also explains, according to that, you could also understand why in Siman Samach Vav, Sif Chafei over there also, the Mechaber over there also paskins that about shtar mechire, that a goy sells a shtar to the yid, and then the goy wants it, and then the goy goes and is moichel the schus to the yid, the moichel the choiv to the original yid after he sold the shtar, that we don't accept the mechil. That's how the Smeh understands it. It means the Smeh looks at it, you did something wrong in Sifrit Ches, you did something wrong in Sifrit Tes. The Yid who opened towards the Goy did something wrong in Sifrit Ches and in Sifrit Tes. If it would be B'dinei Yisrael, Milchatchila, the Goy would have been able to be ma'akev him. But over here, because in Machus you're not being able to be ma'akev him, the difference is, are you doing a hezek b'yadayim or not doing a hezek b'yadayim? The Shach looks at it differently. The Shach says,
Based on that, it's not clear that the Mechaber is not masculine with the Machus.
no,
You don't have a raya ba'ad.
you don't have a raya ba'ad.
And how is he trying to get knowledge? How is he explaining in Siman Memhei? If Mechaber Kudu says it's only the Greus, there seems to be that he has the Koyach Akum even not the Greus, right? He's not going to be able to collect the money from that Yid.
No, it says because it's not Legreus. It's not L'mal Yusa that is coming mitzad the Goy. It's not L'mal Yusa. It's something which he would have B'dinei Yisrael also. Because the shtar, he still would have been able to collect. Elamai, the shtar would have been possible.
We're still giving him. He still now has more than he would have had because he's coming from a Goyish shtar.
He's not getting more money. He's not getting more rights.
He is getting more money.
No, he's not getting more money.
The shtar would be from a Yid. He gets no money. Now he's getting all the money.
If he's able to prove that if the shtar is from a Yid, the Bezim will look at it and will do their own chikidus and see. They will bring Eidim, find Eidim, maybe we'll convert it to Milva Baal Peh or something. But will still not completely eliminate completely, it doesn't eliminate the chayv. If you have a pasul shtar chayv, doesn't mean that the chayv is bottled.
So what would be the Mal Yusuf, where he completely gets a new schus?
He gets a new schus. This is what he says over here. It's a mal yus. He gets a new schus. A schus that b'dinei ha'akum he would not have. B'dinei Yisrael he would not have. Sorry. And the Shach says no. The difference in Sifrit Ches and Sifrit Tes is different. In Sifrit Ches, the reason why the Baal HaChaloin is able to block the shachan from doing it is because the Baal HaChaloin did it beheter. In a way that according to Dina, if it would be done by Dina Yisrael, he would be able to be machzik. For example, if he opened the window before the guy built his chatzar, or if he opened his window and he got reshus from the guy, or if he opened his window and he bought it from the guy. Different ways. The Shach and Sifkat Nitches says he did it beheter. He disagrees in this man. Sif Yitches, he did it beheter. And therefore, the koine, which comes with koyach ha'akum, can't use dinei ha'akum to take away from a Yisrael a schus that he would have had as something that even by dinei Yisrael he has. But in Seif Yutes, he was Pesach Shalei Kedin. As opposed to Seif Yutes. In Seif Yutes, he was Pesach Shalei Kedin. Something which in dinei Yisrael he would have been forced to not do it. Comes dinei ha'akum and tell you the same thing applies over here, you can't do it. And therefore he can't use dinei ha'akum for it. And the Shach questions the Ramah based on this. He says the Ramah he says the Divrei Ramah tzarichiyim. He doesn't explain what exactly the tzarichiyim and the Ramah is, but you could understand from his words what it means. The simple explanation is, in Sif Yutes, he was Pesach Shalei Kedin. That's how the Shach explains it. If it was Pesach Shalei Kedin, therefore it makes sense, Pesach Shalei Kedin b'dinei Yisrael, therefore it makes sense that he should be able to brick the windows. Even according to the Ramah. So therefore, why does the Ramah over here say that you cannot brick his windows? It would make more sense to follow the Mechaber that they could force him to brick his windows. And more so, in Sif Yutes, another element that's different in Sif Yutes and Sif Yutes. And Sif Yutes, what does the Ramah say? Because the Ramah over here says, Yesh Chalkim, Kvan Nizbaj Yesh Chalkim. If you understand that it refers to Sif Yutes, it doesn't make any sense. In Sif Yutes, what does it say? It doesn't say that you could be koifer that the buyer could be koifer the Baal HaChaloin to brick his window. All it says is the buyer has a right to put up a wall on his own property. And over here, it seems like when the Ramah says v'yesh chalkim, that it implies that you cannot force him to brick his window. That you cannot force him to brick his window. And the din is with Baal HaChaloin, not with the Lekech. And the Simon Yutes, the din is with the Lekech, not with Baal HaChaloin. Again, there's different people who explain it. And the Sivis over here points out that when the Ramah says, when it's bar the Yesh Chalkim, he's not talking about Sif Yutes B'chal, he's talking about Sif Zayin. Then Sif Zayin, the Ramah at the end says that Yesh Oimrim, that Hezek Re'iyah is called Hezek Mimela, in a Hezek which happens by itself and not a Hezek B'yadayim. And therefore, something which was done beheter from the beginning, ala nizak laharchik asatzim, and not the mazik, and therefore, when the Ramah over here, when he says he's telling you, you're the nizak, Baal HaChatzer that just bought the koine, you're the nizak. You cannot force the Baal HaChaloin to break his window. Ala nizak laharchik asatzim. But you could go like we wrote in the Sif Yutes also. You could go and put up a wall if you want. You just can't go and force him. The whole din, the Yesh Chalkim, is not that the Baal HaChaloin now could continue being mazik. No, it just means the Baal HaChaloin doesn't have to actually be mazik, remove the nezik. Only the Baal HaChatzer has to remove his own nezik. The Baal HaChatzer, who's the nizak, has to remove his own nezik. And that same explanation is also in Erech Shai. And Avnei Choshen also explains this very similar to it, and he says, Taka, you don't have to go all the way to Sif Zayin. You could Taka explain the same difference that you explain between that you're explaining over here based on Sif Zayin. You could say that the Yesh Chalkim Taka refers to Sif Yutes, and it's the same idea. In Sif Yutes, the Mechaber, the Ramah says you can't force the guy to break it, but you could put up a wall in front of him. And over here also he says, when it's bad the Yesh Chalkim, you can't force him to break it, but you could put a wall in front of it. Nothing really changed between the first one and the other one. Over there, you could put up a wall to retain your rights that he could have done and block the other person's light. And in Sif Yutes, you could put up a wall and block the other person's Hezekriya. There's no difference between Sif Yutes and Sif Yutes. The Yesh Chalkim is not contradicting each other. It's not that the Baal HaChaloin has more schos, or the Baal HaChatzer has more schos. You have to go into all those discussions. The same thing applies in both. And just like in the first, in Sifit Ches, you cannot do it. In Sifit Tes, you cannot do it. But all this doesn't work with the Shach, because that all works perfect with the Smeh. Because the Smeh says that both of them are Pasach Shalei Kedin. So therefore, you want to compare both Sifim. It works out well. But according to Shach, it doesn't work. Because according to the Shach, you have a problem. According to the Shach, Sifit Ches, Sifit Ches, and Sifit Tes, and Sifit Ches, you have was Pasach Kedin, something which in Dinei Yisrael you're able to do it, and Sifit Tes is Pasach Shalei Kedin. So the Shach gets stuck with that explanation. The Shach gets stuck. The only way to understand the Shach is if you learn the whole two Sifim like the Biur HaGra. If you learn the whole three Sifim like Biur HaGra, we're talking about it's a whole long explanation that separates into three different shittas. Then the shitta of the Shach fits into this into here.
How do you understand Pasach Kedin? What does it mean by Pasach Kedin? That
if he was a Yisrael on the other side, he would have been able to be machzik, and he wouldn't have been able to block it. The Yisrael wouldn't have been able to block him. Poseach al gag chaveiroi, the Shach says that was Pasach Kedin. Lo yitzur, there would be a yid over there. There would be no problem.
indicate that he'd done it for 3 years. Let's say.
Either because he did it before the Chatzir was Bechal built, before the guy bought the Chatzir when it was still Hefker, or because
established the Sifit has to be when we know that the guy's Chatzir was there first. In the Ramah he says that the full din is that.
So that's what I mentioned. So the Biur HaGra says that the whole Ramah calls this talking about Sifit Tes, not Sifit Ches. He moves the whole V'chol Zeh, pastes it after Sifit Tes. Look, the Biur HaGra says it in one line. If you look in Piskei HaGra explains it. The Biur HaGra says in one line. This whole thing belongs in Sifit Tes. If you take it out of Sifit Ches, you don't have a question. As I said, according to the Gra, this whole question doesn't apply, because then if you take this and move it to Sifit Tes, then Sifit Tes is Pasach Shalei Kedin. That's why he's talking about that he was Pesach before. What's the din of a mumur? Is a mumur like a goy? When it comes to this, now we did discuss this whole din of a mumur, ke'akum, is not like a akum, t'nek shenish, but all these things say last year in the Mechiras Chametz, and we discussed it in Kashas a year before that, and when it comes to Erevin, we discussed it in Ribbis 3 years ago, so the shiurim are all over, you could find them. Erech Shai points out, brings away from a Divrei Chaim, Choshen Mishpat Chelek Beis Siman Yudalad, that if a yid opens up a chaloin on the window, on a chotzer of a mumur, being that the yid was allowed to do it, and the mumur was not able to be moiche because the mumur is following. Why? Because the mumur can't be moiche because he's following din of the malchus hadach is a mumur. Therefore, the Yisrael has no chazak, not against the goy, not against the mumur. He can't have a chazak against the mumur. It doesn't have a chazak against the mumur, so he can't have a chazak against the sons of the mumur or the lekeach. Can't say that it goes both ways. That you can have a chazak against the mumur because it's a yid, when the yid himself couldn't be moiche. And the Erech Shai adds on to it, and he says, because this is the Erech Shai brings it brings the B'chaim, and he says, doesn't mean that the lekeach the lekeach min a mumur could come now and tell the yid, break your window. Why? Because the Ramah says, but all he could do is, he could put up his wall, because like a bamikoyach nachri, he could put up his wall and block that window. And now Sif Chavav, Sif Chavav discusses when the chaloin was opened beheter, and you want to be maifil on the chaloin that was opened beheter. And this applies more than the previous Sif when we're going to a goy. The Mechaber in Sif Chavav says that someone had a chaloin, and then his friend comes and puts up a chatzir next to it. And then there's a machlikus, by the way, Smeh and Taz, if this is exact, the lashonos of the Mechaber is exact, that first there was a chaloin and then came a chatzir, or just general. But we're going to get to it in a second. So Baal HaChatzir cannot, if a person has a chaloin, beheter, and then there's a chatzir next to it, Baal HaChatzir cannot tell the Baal HaChaloin to break his window. Why? Because Baal HaChaloin is already machzik beheter. And if Baal HaChatzer wants to build up a wall to prevent Hezek Riyah, he has to move Dalad Amas away from the window. Why? So he should not block sunlight. And if he moved Daled Amas away and he still blocks the sunlight, he doesn't have to go any weiter. If the window is low, then you have to also pick up the wall 4 amas high. And if the window, so you shouldn't stand on the window and look inside. And if the window is high, you have to lower the wall in front of it, that it should be a Daled Amas distance, so the one who builds the wall should not be able to sit up and look. And the Taz and the Smell, like I mentioned, disagree on what the understanding of the words of the Mechaber is. Yeah, like the Mechaber, like I told you, the Mechaber's lashon is that there was a window, and the other person comes and wants to build a chatzar, which means that the window came before the chatzar. And the Smeh goes and says he has a problem with it, because in Sif design we have different shittas about someone who opens a window to his friend's churva. When you could be machzik, when you cannot be machzik, and the Mechaber is not machriya, it just brings all the shittas. And over here, what does he do? Over here, so to say that he's machriya over here. He's not he should have been machriya over there. The Mechaber is not machriya in Sif design, he's not machriya over here also. So therefore the Smeh says, no, the Mechaber is not talking about a specific case like that. In Sif Kotten Nun. He says, doesn't make a difference how the chalain was open. As long as the chalain was open, beheter is good. Whether it was before the chatzar was opened up, or after the chatzar was opened up, but he was kind of the rights, or etc. And then comes the second one, wants to be mad and wants to say block your window, then he can't force him. All you could do is the Mechaber is telling you, you could put up a wall and you have to make to make the distance. The Smeh holds that it doesn't make a difference how the person, any case when you're Pesach Chalim Beheter, and the other person wants to complain afterwards that you should break your window, you have to be Marchik Daled Amas. We didn't get to the Taz yet. And then the Sivis follows, quotes the Smeh without, just summarizes the Smeh. It seems like he holds like a Smeh. It's all the Smeh. Taz says, no, Dafka, the Mechaber specifically chose this one. And the reason the Mechaber specifically chose this one, because the Mechaber wants to show you this Machriya like the Rashba, that there is a Chazakah by somebody who opens to a Churva. And therefore, later, the Baal HaChurva can't demand that you should block your window. And if the Baal HaChurva didn't make a Mechaeh, and he could, like the Rashba, then tough luck, you have to move, when you rebuild your house, you have to move back, Daled Amas. And the Aruch HaShulchan paskins like the Taz. And the same thing with any other, and the Taz says the same thing applies to any other Pesach Beheter. But the Mechaber, so there's no real difference between the Smeh and the Taz over here. Only the difference is how to understand if the Mechaber is going to be Machriya or not. Because according to the Smeh, the Mechaber is not Machriya over here. He leaves it all hanging back to what it was before in the Sif design. And the Taz says no, the Mechaber over here came to Sif Tzchis and was Machriya. And the Ramah adds something which we already know, that this is only if you open a window, only if you want to build a wall in front of a window that is directly facing your chatzar. That's when you have to be Marchik Daled Amas. But if it's a chalaim which is open to a Reshus Harabim, and your chatzar is on the other side, you have no right, you don't have to be Marchik there's no chazak, in the middle, you don't need the Marchik Daled Amas. Now we're just going to mention a couple points that we discussed previously, just reminders which apply over here also. Regarding Bimarchik the Kaisel Daled Amas, we already know the same thing applies to Bimarchik a tree. There's a machlekes of cutting down a tree, cutting the branches, we discussed in a previous shir. If there is light that comes, except there's other light entering the house, except for regardless of this chaloin, is that considered that you're still mindful or not? We discussed it also in a previous shir. That every chaloin is la'ira, that's the shit of the Rashba, and all I just want to point out over here, you have in Sa'if, in Beis Yaakov over here, Sa'if Kotten Yud Beis, he brings from the book Yad Rama, that this only applies to a window, which when you block it, it would have less, not enough light in the house. But if there is light, then you don't have to be marchik. And he says that's what's brought also in the Shas Chuvas Harosh, the name of the Rameh. Now, what happens if somebody built Shalekadin? That means the person who built was Maifil, and he wasn't supposed to do it. Does he have to destroy what he built? So if you look at the end of the Sif, and the end of the Sif it says that if you built, you were supposed to make a distance of 4 amas height, and you built less than that, so we tell you have to make the wall lower. It means you do have to fix your damage. And in other places, you have to cut the branches of the tree. But what happens if you build it all the way close? You can't lower the height. You built it 2 amas away from the window. You have to knock down the whole window. If you look in the Shas Tshuva Sheila Meishiv, Kama, Chel Gimel Siman Leishches, you do have to. The Rashba points out in Siman, Chel Gimel Siman Kuf Nevav, which is brought in the Beis Yosef, that Dalad Amas is a shiur kavua. And that's what the Chachamim were kaiveya. However, there is one exception to this rule, and that is in Shulchan Aruch and Eirach Chaim. If you want to build in front of a chaloin of a shul, Beis HaKnesses, the Shulchan Aruch, the Mechaber and Eirach Chaim Siman Kuf Nun Sif Dalad, does not bring, anybody disagrees, brings a shitta of the Aguda, which is a Das Yochid, and the Mechaber Paskins like him, and that by a Beis HaKnesses you need more than Dalad Amas. Doesn't say how much. The Mogen Avram says, obviously with the Beis HaKnesses is very machzik in the chalonis. And how much do you have to the Pri Megadim over there in Eirach Chaim says that Ezras Noshim is not sure if it needs also more than Dalad Amas or not, if it needs also a lot of light or not. But the Mishnah Brura says, brings the Pri Megadim and says, don't be moisif more than what the Mechaber. The Mechaber is talking about Beis HaKnesses, is Beis HaKnesses, not more than that. The Aruch HaShulchan, so now how much is here by a shul? Is that unlimited? How much is it? The Aruch HaShulchan in Sif Zayin says that the shiur of light for a shul is harbe, kefi sheyishor ha'oir mikedem, as much as needed to keep the same exact amount of light that was there before you going to the building. That could be if the windows, that you're going to have engineers are going to measure what the distance is and measure where you're going to put your wall, whatever it is, and determine exactly what's going to be. That is the Aruch HaShulchan. The Knesset Agdoil over here, Hagor Satur Oisayim Beis, says 8 amas is enough. Dalad amas, yes, but for a shul 8 amas is enough. And the Noida B'Yehuda, Tanyona Siman Nun Zayin, also says that more than ches amas is not a problem. And the Knesset Agdoila adds, between 4 and 8, that the Dayanim could decide. But more than 8 is for sure not a problem. If it's more than 4 but less than 8, you go to Bezdin. If it's more than 8, you don't have to worry about it b'chlal. But the Aruch HaShulchan does not say that. The Aruch HaShulchan says, Harbe kefi sheyishor ha'oir mikedem. And in Heintige Poiskim, Kavus Chuvas of Rav Elyashiv Chel Gimel Siman Chav Beis, also says that there's no shear. It depends on how much light is needed. Now, just since I mentioned Aruch HaShulchan, just point out another thing from Aruch HaShulchan. Aruch HaShulchan changes the lashon. He says, "Aboinech keneged chalim beis haknesses ay beis hamedrash." He adds the words ay beis hamedrash. Means he adds into the halacha beis hamedrash is the same din as a beis haknesses. Now that's in Sa'if Chafal. If we move to Sa'if Chav Beis, if someone builds a wall next to a window, not in front of a window, next to a window, he has to be marchik tefach. From where the window ends, he has to be marchik tefach. And he has to go up 4 amas, so you shouldn't look. He has to go up above it 4 amas, or he pulls his wall back. That means that he makes it on a slant, etc. There's a machlokes. The Smel here points out that even though the Torah brings the opinion that you also have to do a goy vadal damas and also make the wall slanty so you can't sit in it, the Mechaber does not hold like that, and the Ramo Dafka did not mention it here because he doesn't hold of it. And in Seif Chav Gimel, the Mechaber says that if you build from the 2 sides of the window, 2 walls, you have to have 4 amas distance between the 2 walls, and you don't count the window. You don't have to exclude the window. That means it doesn't have to be 2 amas from each side of the windows. It just means that 4 amas total, and the window is in the middle, not exactly in the middle, somewhere in the Dalad amas. That's what the Smeh over there points out. As opposed to the Torah, which says that you need 4 amas except for the width of the window. Now, what I want to point out is, so now if you want to build to a wall on each side of the window and a wall in front of the window, you need a square 4 amas in front of that window. You can have a wall inside, the wall on the side, and the wall in front. 4 amas squared, you'll cover it according to Beis Yosef, and and that's the lashon of the Beis Yosef in the Beis Yosef, that even though he quotes the Mukhi Yosef, he takes out the word Mirabois. The Mechaber continues and adds something interesting on top over here. V'lo yisakech al gabeim. You can't put on top of these three walls, you can't put a roof. Unless you distance this awning away from the window also 4 amas. That means if the window is here, you have to start your awning 4 amas away. The Sifas HaMishpat points out on this.
If the table has to be down on the car, if the table cannot be within 4 amas, no matter what,
yeah. No, it's 4 amas distance away. You can't have, if you have a window here, yeah, here, and you put one wall, you can't put a cover over here. You can't put a roof on top of this square. The roof has to start 4 amas distance away from where the window ends. So the roof will only start here. The Nesiva says that in our houses, which are slanted, and they have an awning and it sticks out towards outside on top of your house, you have to make sure that piece which sticks out from your house, the overhang, has to be 4 amas away from the other person's window. And the same thing, Kesef HaKochim even takes it even further. He says, Mefurash, from this Sa'if, Shetikra al gabi chaloinos, tzricha al choked al amas, you have to start the tikra away from the chaloinos 4 amas. Ve'ein moyel al chokah kein begoiva. And it doesn't mean you have to go up 4 amas. It doesn't help you going up 4 amas. The kevon da ha'oir hu me'agoiva, v'gam being that it comes from the height and also very high, has to be 4 amas away from the whole window, 4 amas distance. That is what it is. And from this came a whole discussion in the Poskim in our generation. What happens if I have a window in my house? We live in a condo building, I have a 2nd floor, and I have windows. And the person on the 3rd floor wants to take out a porch. What's the din? Could I prevent him? Do we say that it goes based on the walls around it, or do we say no, it doesn't go based on the walls around it? There is a book called Mishpat Yehuda to Rav Ze'ev Yehuda Weiss at Dyna, Williamsburg. Chelik Beis Siman Pei Daled. He has a long pilpul about it, and he brings in the Sifas HaMishpat and the Kesef HaKochim, which we mentioned. He brings the Shas HaTshuvas Beis David, Choshen Mishpat Siman Pei Vav, and Shas HaTshuvas Shemesh Tzedakah, Choshen Mishpat Siman Yud Gimel, that you're not allowed to build a porch on top of a window at all. Yeah. However, the Shemesh Tzedakah and the Minchas Yitzchak Chelik Vav Siman Kuf Ayin explain that this din of not being able to build a porch on top of the other person's window is only if you also build walls on the sides. This din of the mechaber, that you're not allowed to laharchik hashipua, laharchik hagag, that laharchik hasikuch, is only when you have walls on the sides also. That means you can't go and build a full box around your neighbor's window. You can't completely block, because that's going to help anything. There's no light coming in. But if it's only from on top, it's not a problem. That's how the Minchas Yitzchak paskins. That's the Minchas Yitzchak paskins. If you look at the Kesef HaKochim lav dafka, because the Kesef HaKochim says doesn't say that it's with the walls next to it, and the Sifas HaMishpat also is talking about an overhang. Lav dafka is talking about an overhang of your house that's going towards the friend's house. So. But that's a Minchas Yitzchak paskins, that you could put up a porch on top of your friend's, on the 2nd floor of a condo, even though you're on the bottom floor, and you're going to be blocking the other person's light, because you're blocking some of the light, because that's not a problem. Now, if everybody bought condos together and everybody has a right to open up the porches and it's part of the deal that you bought meikare, you can't complain afterwards. You're kinda milchatchila understanding everybody has the right to do it. So you enjoy the time that you had the windows. Otherwise not. Or if the person under you is not going to build this, if you're not going to block the person under you with a square around his window, then for sure Minchas Yitzchak matter. Now we're going to go to one last, I think one or maybe two sifim, one last sif, sif chafei, which over there it says, the mechaber says if somebody opens up a window on top of his roof, and from there light goes in, and then the neighbor wants to put up a wall next to it, and that's going to block the light from coming in. That's not an isur, and the shachan could do whatever he wants, and the reason is explained in the Biur HaGra over here. Because the light comes in from on top, you cannot be machzik. Based on what it says in Sa'if Chavav, that how could you be machzik? The only time you could be machzik is light that comes in front into your windows. That's what the Chachamim were misaken, not for light that's coming from on top. However, the Ramah right away pipes in and says, this is also brought from the Beis Yosef, in the Beis Yosef itself. There are certain scenarios where somebody does something, builds something for a specific purpose, and he's machzik for that specific purpose, and based on that, he has a right to prevent his friend from doing something. And what's the examples that Ramah brings? Someone who opened in his house, built in his house a wine room or a oil room, and that needs a flow of air going in. And now the second one comes and wants to build a wall in front of it, which is going to block the flow of air. So the person who built it has a right to block him from doing it, even if he's marchik dalad ames, if it's going to block the flow. Why? Because the room that he opened in his house was done b'reshus, and he was machzik it, and it was done for a specific purpose, and therefore he cannot do something which is going to cause him a hezek. And then there's the big nesivus hamishpat. I'm not going to get into it. That how is it aktsas, not in nesivus aktsas. I'm going to get in short. That how is it possible that a person is koine the avir that's flowing around it? And it's interesting because this is the only one of the few places in the whole Choshen Mishpat where the nesivus quotes the ktsas and says that he got it right. Usually they disagree, so this is a historical moment in this chelik. But the Ktsas over there explains that he was talking about, it was zeichem in a hefker. When he built the room, he was zeichem in a hefker. Or he got a right from the melech or something of the sort. That's how he was able to have the rights of the air over there. Because otherwise, he would have no rights otherwise. And he says, maybe the Rashba is talking about a place where the minhag was that you're kind of that together with it. And the Avnei Choshen and this Beis Yaakov, they all say there's no question b'chlal. Now, yeah. There's a bunch of examples which apply to this. I'm not going to tell you the din in each one. Just point out to you, this is something which existed in the past, and we're soon going to see the examples today. There's something called, you see in the Sfada Shapaiskim, something called the estirador, which is where you would stretch out clothing to let them dry on sunshine. And there's a tshuva Ma'ara Sasan and the Maharsha Chelik Av Siman Tzadikein, Beis David Siman Samachei, that you could block if a person is building and is going to put up beheter on his roof this thing, and then the other person wants to build up, Estirador. How it's spelled in the Poskim: Aleph Yud Shin Tes Yud Reish Aleph Daled Vav Reish. Ishtirador. And it's a drying rack for clothing, drying lines. And then the person is going to build a wall next to it, which is sunshine is going to block the sun and the clothing are not going to get dry, or block the airflow. Then you could stop him from doing it. How many examples do we have today for that? Person built